I hope you guys are enjoying the Web Summit. And I wanted to remind you again about the sister event happening in Canada. Anyone here from Canada? Yeah, good. You going? All right. The flash sale is going on right now, so check out the website. Get the tickets while they're cheap. Now let me talk about this coming panel. You're not going to believe the speakers we got. Every one of them is a teenager. And they've done amazing things, and I feel like a total underachiever on this stage. There are the three young scientists working on topics as diverse as machine learning, quantum computing, and clean meat. You know, these three are really precocious. So please welcome to this stage from Knowledge Society, machine learning developer Liam Hinzman, deep learning and quantum researcher Breanna Gopal, and the biotech researcher Isabella Grandic. Please welcome.
Who the heck invited 3 teenagers to speak at WebSummit? This is going to be fun. We're actually all part of a program called the Knowledge Society, which is focused on giving young people the skills, mindset, and network they need to solve some of the world's hardest problems. Like, I'm Liam. I'm working at Sick Kids Hospital, one of the largest research hospitals in Canada. I'm focused on how we can use AI and machine learning to improve the lives of babies born prematurely.
Hey everybody, I'm Breanna. I started off in the quantum computing field at 14, interning at a company called Xanadu where I built photonic quantum computing systems, and then got super interested into AI, worked at this company called Sanctuary AI, and we were building human intelligent robots.
Hey, I'm Izzy, and if you forget, I have a necklace to remind you. For the past year, I've been really passionate about the intersection of food tech and artificial intelligence, looking into things like how we can use genetic algorithms to optimize the proteins used to grow these foods, and future food nerd right here. All 3 of us are really excited about how we can use emerging technologies to solve some of the world's biggest problems. Which is why we're really excited that there are passionate young people around the world, like Greta Thunberg, protesting for important problems like climate change. I've personally always been a mini protester at heart. When I was 11, I really wanted this game. It was called Papa's Freezeria. It was $4.99 in the App Store. And I tried to convince my mom for a week to get this game. And she just kept on saying no. So I did what any 11-year-old would do. I protested. I said, Mom, I'm not going to school until I get this game. And I didn't go to school for 2 days, and I finally got the game. And that might have been a little bit of a bratty thing to do, but in that moment, I realized the power of protesting if it's done right. I realized that if you have a goal and you work towards your goal, you can do it. And so bringing it back to these climate protests happening around the world, literally millions of people marching for this 4-step solution: flying less, meat consumption, joining an activist movement, and voting green. Although I love the outcome that we're driving for, we want the climate to stop changing, I personally don't feel confident in this plan. It's not clear to me how this is going to be the thing that slaps climate change in the face. There almost seems to be this vagueness in how we approach and understand the problem of climate change. I'll give you an example. Back to my protesting, I went up to my mom and I specifically asked her for exactly what I wanted. I asked her for Papa's Freezeria, the game. But imagine if I asked her for entertainment. Well, she could buy me a Harry Potter book or a remote-controlled car. When I ask her for entertainment, the next steps are just not clear. And right now with our climate marches, the next steps aren't clear. If we all knew exactly what we needed to do, if we knew what technologies we need to leverage, we would be doing that right now. But we're not. And so that's where the vagueness comes in. Although I love the passion, there just doesn't seem to be a connect with the goal. We're asking for 7+ billion people to behaviorally change their lives, and that's a really hard thing. And overall, the problem of climate change is much more complex than entertaining an 11-year-old. But we live in this really exciting point in history, where we have a whole lot of emerging technologies that give us the potential to unlock opportunities. There's so many opportunities in the world that were just impossible without technology. Without the internet, we couldn't have e-commerce. Like, there would be no E for the commerce. Without planes, it would be impossible to have international business. And maybe with today's tools of quantum computing, AI, cellular agriculture, new food technologies, maybe those are going to be the things that unlock the solution to this problem. But we can't even start unlocking this solution until we understand what the next steps are.
So a couple of weeks ago, Liam, Izzy, and I got together on a Friday night, and we were like, let's just break down climate change. Pretty normal thing that a bunch of 16-year-olds do on a Friday night, you know? And after a couple of hours of research and really thinking about this problem, we think that we came up with a pretty good hypothesis as to how we could punch climate change in the face. The first realization that we had, though, is that climate change isn't actually a problem. It's an outcome. People are poor. People are hungry. The climate is changing, but why are people poor? Why are people hungry, and why is the climate changing? What we really need to do is to dissect this problem. And we need to take an 80-20 approach to figuring out what are the main causes of climate change, and how do we focus on those main causes. So we started looking at a bunch of industries, and we were like, what are the top industries that are contributing to climate change today? First industry is energy generation and energy storage. It accounts for 29% of global greenhouse gases, and that's because, well, it takes a lot of energy to produce energy, and it takes a lot of energy to also store energy. Right after that, agriculture and livestock. It accounts for around 20 to 30% of global greenhouse gases, and this is because it takes a lot of resources to produce food today. Now, this accounts for almost 50% of the entire problem. And if we were to focus all of our effort and time into thinking about how to tackle these three core areas, we could really figure out a way to punch climate change in the face. But we can't only be thinking about incremental baby step improvements to today's current solutions. Instead, we need to figure out a way to exponentially improve our current solutions. And I think the best way to go about doing this is by leveraging uprising technology. Let me just show you how to do that for energy generation. Today, we take in 10,320 quintillion joules of energy from the sun on a daily basis. And if we were to leverage 0.1% of that energy, that would be enough energy to power the globe for 2 years. Let me just say that again. If we were to leverage 0.1% of the energy that we take in on a daily basis from the sun, that would be enough energy to power the globe for 2 years. But today we're not doing this, and that's because solar panels are only 15% efficient. If they take in all this energy, they actually lose 85% of the energy that they're taking in. And this reminds me of a couple of thoughts that I had a couple nights ago at WebSummit. So Liam, Izzy, and I, we were finding the best restaurant in all of Lisbon. So we went to McDonald's. And at McDonald's, we ordered 100 chicken McNuggets. And while we were eating these chicken McNuggets, I thought, wouldn't it be absolutely crazy if we ordered 100 nuggets and they only gave us 15? I mean, that would make me pretty mad. What's funny is that that's kind of what's happening with solar panels today. They're taking in 100% of this energy, and they can only convert 15% of that energy into usable electricity. If this happened at McDonald's, I'd be like, what the heck? Where are my 85 other nuggets? But today in energy, specifically solar energy, nobody is like, what the heck? Where is the 85% of that energy going? So I was like, where is that 85% of that energy going? After we finished eating our 5 Michelin star meal at McDonald's, we went back home to the whiteboard, and I started thinking about why exactly solar panels are this inefficient. And it really comes down to the materials that solar panels are made of. They're made of this material called crystalline silicon, and its maximum energy efficiency is 33%. So of all the energy that it takes in, it can only convert 33% of that into usable electricity. I thought to myself, okay, why don't we just design and simulate new materials to create solar panels that are significantly more energy efficient? I mean, we can do this using generative design or other AI algorithms. We can simulate aircrafts that are cheaper or faster. Why can't we just do the same thing with materials? The reason being is that materials are significantly more complex. So if we wanted to simulate a material and design a new one, it would take billions of dollars and insane amounts of computational time. Not to mention the fact that materials are made up of fundamental particles that follow the laws of quantum mechanics. And because they follow the laws of quantum mechanics, it's actually a lot better for us to use a quantum device instead of our current classical computing methods. Thankfully, there's this new type of computer called a quantum computer that leverages quantum mechanics to be able to solve incredibly difficult problems. Let's just take this maze, for example. If I were to give a classical computer this maze, it'd go through every single path in the maze to find the best one. We give the same problem to a quantum computer, it can be in a superimposed state of all the possible paths in the maze and find the solution significantly faster. And so using quantum computers, we can actually design and create new materials that will enable us to create solar panels that can capture significantly more energy. And we can do this by using an algorithm called a variational quantum eigensolver, or VQE. What this algorithm does at a high level is it simulates the energy levels of a molecule, passes it to a classical computer, solves an optimization problem where it optimizes that molecule, and then outputs the optimal material or the optimal molecule for some purpose. So just in case that didn't make any sense to you, that's perfectly fine. We're going to apply this to chicken nuggets again. So in this case, I'm going to simulate the molecular structure of a chicken nugget on my quantum computer, take that simulation, pass it to a classical computer, optimize its tasty parameter, and then output the world's best tasting chicken McNugget that exists. For solar panels, this is a bit different. Instead, we're going to be simulating a material, passing it to a classical computer, optimizing the parameters that are related to energy efficiency, and spitting out a material that has a significantly higher energy efficiency, and it can be then used for solar panels. So by leveraging this new type of computing, by leveraging quantum computers, we can design and create new materials that are significantly more energy efficient. And what that means is that we'll be able to completely reinvent how solar panels work today. We'll be able to tap into quintillions of joules of energy that we've never been able to before, potentially powering the globe for decades using a renewable and clean source.
All right, we could have all the solar panels in the world, but without cheap batteries, cheap energy storage, we wouldn't have any power at night. And so I want to tell you what I think the future of energy storage looks like. But first, I want to tell you a story about the one thing I think that's cooler than quantum chickens, and that's monkeys. So there's this experiment where a scientist put 7 monkeys into a cage with bananas hanging from the ceiling and a ladder underneath. And as you'd expect, one of the monkeys ran for the bananas towards the ladder. But before it could get there, the scientist hosed all the monkeys with ice-cold water. And the monkeys kept on going for the ladder, but every time they got sprayed with water. And so eventually the monkeys learned, stay away from the ladder. But then what happened was that the scientists put the hose away, never to be used again. But the monkeys didn't know that their world had dramatically changed, that the hose was gone, and so they continued to act in the exact same way. And this is the exact same thing that's happening with lithium-ion battery research. Like, since the 1990s, our research process to find new electrolytes to make batteries cheaper has stayed basically the same. And all of this research is focused on how can we make batteries cheaper. Because if we want to switch to 100% renewable energies, we need energy storage to be cheaper than current fossil fuels. And that number turns out to be $20 per kilowatt hour. And right now, we're at $160 per kilowatt hour. And it's projected that by 2030, we'll reach $60. That's still 3 times more expensive than where we need to be. So clearly, battery research is too slow. And it's too slow because the process we're using isn't great. Like, we have to research for different compounds, synthesize them to experiment on them, and then finally we can experiment, see how conductive they are, and then finally trial. But the problem is, we're using the same process as we have from the 1990s. We're like the monkeys. Our world has changed. Like, we have access to more data, more computational power, more advanced machine learning algorithms, but we're still researching in the exact same way. And so it takes days to test just a single compound. And there's tens of thousands of battery compounds that we need to go through if we want to find the optimal battery materials. But if we realize that we've been like the monkeys, we can actually do a lot more. Like, using machine learning, we can actually test thousands of battery compounds in just minutes. And so in machine learning, there's this concept called a neural network. And it's kind of like a computerized version of how the brain works. It takes in data and makes new predictions. And so to accelerate battery research, we can use two different types of neural networks. The first takes in structural data, things like the average lithium anion distance in different electrolyte compounds, and uses this to predict the conductivity of never-before-seen compounds. And we can do this, but there's one problem. It doesn't predict how chemically stable these compounds will be. And so we have to slap on another machine learning model. And what this is designed to do is take in elemental information, things like the ionization energy, electron affinity, of the component parts of an electrolyte to predict how chemically stable that compound will be. And so if we put these two things together, one neural network filtering compounds based on conductivity, and the other based on chemical stability, we can actually go through thousands of compounds in just minutes. And accelerating battery research, making batteries cheaper is incredibly important, but maybe this approach with machine learning won't actually be how we end up getting there. But I think the thing to remember is that we need to stop monkeying around. We need to change with the world around us, and that's how we'll reach the future of batteries.
I want to completely switch gears. Energy generation and energy storage is awesome, but it's making me a little hungry, and it's right before lunch, so I thought it'd be fitting to talk about food, especially since food is 1/4 of climate change's emissions. It's 1/4 of the problem. Now, a lot of people think that the reason the emissions are so high is because cows emit methane, and methane goes into the environment. But that's only a fraction of the issue. The real reason why we emit so much greenhouse gas because of our food is because our systems are extremely inefficient. So, for example, if we view cows as a technology that we're using to grow meat, for every 100 pounds of food we feed a cow, the cow only retains 3 pounds of food for us. That's a 3% efficient technology. Where else in the world would we accept such an inefficiency? So if we were going to McDonald's and we ordered 100 chicken nuggets, we would only get 3. If that was me, I would go, I'd be pissed off, and I'd be like, where are my 97 chicken nuggets? The way I like to think about complex problems in these terribly inefficient systems is I use a mental model of first principles. So when I see this massive issue that's causing a whole lot of harm to our environment, I think about where the root cause is. Because if you can deeply understand the origin of the problem, then it's so much easier to build a solution. So I'm going to bring you through how biologically meat is made, and then how we can use this to create a completely new, optimized system that uses 98% less water, 99% less land, and 91% less greenhouse gas. So it starts with a cell, and it's called a myoblast. These cells have the potential to be muscle tissue, but they're not muscle tissue yet. They have the right genes, they just have to learn how to express them. So the first thing that happens is we get more of these cells. They proliferate because they have something called an extracellular matrix. Cells are anchorage dependent, which means they need some sort of protein structure, collagen, whatever it is, that helps them communicate and continue proliferating. And then they also have a type of factor called FGF, or fibrogen growth factor, and that convinces these cells to continue growing. Eventually, we run out of FGF, and we get a whole lot of other factors that come into the play, and we switch our process. So we start fusing these cells together, and that's called myogenesis. And myogenesis creates the formation of myotubes. Myotubes are the basis of muscle tissue. So if we have a bunch of myotubes together, that is what tissue is. So you can really think about this process as starting off with a myoblast cell, and we're putting it through a biological incubator, which is a cow. The cow gives it the FGF, the myogen proteins. It gives it the extracellular matrix. It's sort of like baking a cake. It has all the ingredients and recipes, and eventually we get muscle tissue. Cows are just food machines. That's literally all we're using them for. But they're not optimized to do this. If we think about evolution and biology, cows are meant to reproduce and survive, which happens to mean they can do this process, but they're not good at it. 97% of what we feed them doesn't go towards sustaining this process. So if cows are machines that we're just using to do this, why don't we create machines that are optimized for the process of creating muscle tissue? That's the whole premise of cultured meat. It starts with those same myoblasts, puts them through the exact same biological incubation process, and we get muscle tissue in the end. Now, this technology has been super exciting, and for the past year, I've been working into it. And the reason it works is because there's two things cells need to grow. They need the factors, so the FGF to convince them to proliferate. They need different myogen factors to convince them to fuse. They also need carbohydrates, lipids, all the nutrients. And then they need the surface. And a cultured meat system provides them both of these things. So we can think about it like, let's say we were living on a farm, and we have a pet cow. The cow's name is Ian. Traditionally, if I wanted a hamburger from Ian, I'd have to kill Ian, and then I'd only get the hamburger. But with cultured meat, all we need is a tiny portion of Ian's stem cells, keeping him alive, it's painless. And then we can culture them into a burger, eat the burger while looking at the cow at the same time. That's awesome. So we take Ian's stem cells, those are the myoblasts, and we give them those factors, whatever these cells need. The way we develop this, it's called a medium, which is basically it's like a magic potion that gives these cells whatever they could ever imagine. And how this is being developed, that's one of the hardest challenges in cultured meat, identifying what exactly Ian's cells need. But let's say we give them those factors, and then we give them the right structure. There's different types of materials, like gelatin or insect scaffolds, but these support Ian cells. And in the end, we get a scrumptious burger. And because we're doing the exact same process, we're starting with the exact same cells, we're giving them the two things that they need, we end up with the exact same product. Except because we're not using a 3% technology, it's magnitudes of more efficient. And it's not that often that you see 16-year-olds passionate about tissue engineering or supporting these cells, building different algorithms to help make this process more successful. But the reason I'm so excited about this is because for a long time, I thought we all needed to become vegan to save the world. But meat is just so good, so that would be terrible and hard. But it turns out we don't actually need to do that. I mean, if everyone turned vegan, we would be in a really great place. We wouldn't have any meat. We wouldn't have any of these problems. But we also don't have the luxury of time to convince 7+ billion people to align on becoming vegan. It's already hard to get them to align on simple matters like whether hot dogs are sandwiches or not. I'm not that confident that we're going to be able to do that with veganism. But we don't need to wait. We can use technologies like clean meat to optimize the process and end up with the same product. And this is super important because meat is a whole lot of our greenhouse gas production, and we have to lower our carbon emissions by yesterday. So we need something fast. 5 years ago, there was 12 people working in this space. Today, there's 20 companies. And these companies are dramatically transforming the way we make food. In the next couple decades, when this is everywhere, it's going to be because of those companies. And we've already cultured chicken, beef, and foie gras even. But what if there was 40 companies? Just 40. We would literally reach our goal twice as fast. And the reason I'm so excited is because if there was more people working in this space, imagine what we're going to unlock. We're just optimizing the process to make meat, and we can have the effects of veganism without actually convincing everyone to become vegan. Now, whether or not we get 40 companies, 1,000 companies, and all people on board and all people working on this problem, we're always going to need an alternative to meat. We need to start making meat without the animal, and that's how we're going to revolutionize 1/4 of climate change's problem.
This is exciting. Like, we can use cultured meat to create burgers without cows, machine learning to create cheaper batteries, and quantum computing to create more efficient solar panels. And I think we need to realize that now is the first time in history that we can actually tackle these problems head on. Like, up until now, we just didn't have the tools to do this. And so I think we all need to recognize this shift, that things have changed, and alter how we're thinking about solving climate change. Like, the ways we're doing it right now, hoping that people will change their behavior to become vegan, isn't going to work. I also don't think that hoping that governments will implement drastic measures to implement harsh carbon taxes is going to be the solution either. I think what it's going to come down to is individuals using technology to create the solutions of the future. So I think that accelerating solar and battery research and transforming agriculture in some way is how we're going to get there. Like, if we solve these three factors alone, that's over half of the problem right there. And sure, maybe the solutions we propose today with machine learning, quantum computing, and cultured meat isn't going to be how we get there. But I think it's a start. And I think it's incredibly important because we need concrete goals that we're working towards. And so the next time you hear an inspiring talk by a young climate activist, but are a bit confused on what's actually being done to solve the problem, just know that there are 16-year-olds around the world trying to use technology to tangibly solve climate change. Obrigado. Thank you.
If you want to come say hi and talk about disruption or tech, you can tweet us or come see us at WebSummit. We're here all day.
Have a good day.